Awesome. Well, hey, Xiao. Welcome to the podcast of Let's Figure It Out. I'm your host, Heath. First of all, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time from your busy schedule and doing this podcast with us. Would love to start with how are you today?
Jeet, I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for this invitation to participate in your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure for us to have you as a guest on this podcast. So, we'll would love to get our listeners a little bit more about yourself. So, could you introduce yourself with like what do you do and a little bit of a brief intro from your perspective?
Sure, of course. So, my background is in accounting and finance, and right now, I'm 38 years old, and I recently retired from Salesforce back in 2023. I retired from corporate life after reaching financial independence. And now I spend most of my time just helping other Salesforce team members better understand their financial journey, either with their taxes, with their RSUs and ESPP, and just with early retirement planning on their own journey to early retirement as well.
That's incredible. Congratulations on getting like an early retirement, and financial freedom is, I think it's everyone's goal here. So and definitely that's our biggest topic to discuss in this podcast is to how can you help more individuals to achieve what you just have from a freedom perspective. So before we dive more into that part, one question I have is like what inspired your journey into helping individuals with this personal finance?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the m- simple answer is this. I hate paying taxes, or more specifically, I hate paying more taxes than I'm legally required to. And when you work for a company like Salesforce, where there's a huge earning opportunity and the compensation model is so complex, we talk about RSU, ESPP, commissions, bonuses, all of those are taxed differently. And I know based on my own experience and based on helping team members while I was still working that many people are confused with their taxes, and majority of them, the vast majority, are overpaying in their taxes. Not that they're trying to hide from the IRS, is that they simply are reporting their income incorrectly and thus what I call double taxing themselves, especially with their RSUs and ESPP compensation.
That is so true, and I completely agree to your part of like not to pay taxes more than what you should owe. So like you should always be mindful of your finance, and that's where our first sort of like segment is about like the finance 101. So from your perspective, like from basics standpoint, what are some things which every individual should know from a personal finance perspective? Let's say even someone starting right now into the professional journey.
Yes. So I have a couple of perspectives on this. So, if you are someone who is just starting your career, the best thing you can do to start the investment journey is to better understand the available benefits from your employers, right? I get it. Everyone gets handed the annual like 100-page PDF that say, here's all your benefits. And a lot of us, we just hit the delete button. It's like, I don't have time to read 100 pages. But and you really don't need to read the whole 100 pages. But a couple of things that you want to pay attention to is like your 401k. What is the minimum that you need to contribute to get the maximum employer match? That's literally low hanging fruit, right? So at Salesforce, it's like they match up to 6%, up to $6,000. So in your mind, you should at least target meeting the requirement of $6,000 because that is literally free money. Second thing is you want to be mindful of other how your benefits are being taxed or how your compensation is being taxed. Because as I alluded to earlier, all those can your compensation can be taxed very differently. If they're RSU, ESPPs, bonuses, commissions, they have different tax rates allocated to it, right? So one of the issues I see people is during tax time, they'll start entering a bunch of tax documents. And the tax software, TurboTax will spit out a number that says, you owe the federal government $10,000. And they know in their mind, like, wait a second, I've already paid over 50,000 now. How do I owe another 10? Where's that coming from? And they don't know how to do the math. What I call the math, like, does that even make sense that I would owe additional 10,000? How is that calculated? Where is that coming from? Right? So you should, by knowing how each of your compensation components are being taxed and how the taxes are being withheld, you can easily do napkin math and say, okay, that is why I would owe an additional 10,000. And that's also a sanity check because you might say, like, wait a second, I know I've been paying X amount of taxes and I know that I've been withholding at the correct rate. Therefore, this 10,000 just from the outset doesn't sound correct. So you actually have some red flags that trigger a warning like, hey, you might want to double check your math, right? So I would definitely say right off the bat, read your benefits package, understand what's available to you, and attack the low hanging fruit, and also understand how the components of your compensation is being taxed so that when it comes tax time, you have some sanity as to whether or not the results are correct or not.
That's true. And just to double down on what you mentioned about like 401ks, like every company does offer some kind of a match, and that's the minimum definite everyone should be sort of like investing into, because that's a free money you're getting out of it. And second thing is like you don't have to worry about like, hey, I need to put aside this much amount of money every month. It's automatically going to taken care of, and it's going to be invested. So after 20 years, if you see your account, you'll be much more happier that, hey, my money is growing and I'm getting more returns on it. So quick
Yeah,
other
absolutely.
question.
And I would actually go up, I would go further that now that was for the beginners, right? Those starting career. I would say that those who are in their mid careers, which is the majority of people I work with at Salesforce, is that now you have to take it up to the next level. Not only are you meeting the minimum, but now you have to look at what are all the free dollars that I need to be taking advantage of, maximizing, because these are opportunities that will never occur again, or at least the clock will reset every calendar year. So I tell people, like, now you need want to think about maximizing your 401k, the 23,500. You want to be maximizing the mega backdoor raw 401k via after tax contribution, the 40,500, right? When you include the match, the 23,500 plus the 40,500, that is $70,000 you can save at Salesforce. And if you can save $70,000 a year at Salesforce, we should all see confettis fall from the ceiling celebrating that
Absolutely.
achievement. And that's why I tell people, like, you have to think beyond just the bare minimum. But when you start earning real money that has can do serious impact on your financial health, you want to take advantage of all the free tax money as possible.
That is so true, and I completely agree. If someone can save like tax-free money for $70,000 each year, that could be definitely much
Yeah.
more larger than a confetti for sure. So one other question I have in terms of like this investments is like a lot of so like my role does not qualify for the stock options, but I have seen many individuals in software roles, they do have ESPP, they do have stock options. What is the best way to take more benefit and save on taxes? Let's say a lot of people say that don't sell your ESPP for 2 years, otherwise you're going to pay more tax on gains. But ESPP is a free money where you get some kind of a profit already as soon as you get allotted. So what's your take on ESPP and stock options, and how should one should be making sure they get the best benefit out of it?
Yes. ESPPs is one of the best benefits at Salesforce. And it's perfect that you mention it because the June trading window it's right upon us, and many people have to decide what to do with their ESPP, right? And here's my personal take. What I did when I was at Salesforce, I always contributed the max, which is equivalent almost like 10,000 every 6 months, right? You have to enroll in that. This isn't something that the company automatically signs you up for. You have to enroll in it. Second, you have to make sure you fund it, and you can fund all the way up to 10,000 every 6 months. So 20,000 for the entire year, give or take. Now, every 6 months, what I did was I sold immediately when it became my possession. The reason being is because I'm leveraging the ESPP as low hanging fruit, guaranteeing locking in my wins because there were other financial objectives that were more pertinent to me than having, the stock price of CRM increase twofold, threefold, like it has done the last 3, 4 years. What I mean by that is this. So I was able to pay off my mortgage, my 15-year mortgage in 7 years because of ESPP and RSUs that I received. That was more important to me and had a greater impact on my life than seeing Salesforce stock double, triple in price. That to me didn't have much value versus being 100% debt free. The reason being was, in my mind, I've always wanted to retire early before I was 40. So I did the math actually as a fun exercise. If I hadn't sold any of my ESPPs from 3 years ago, what would it be worth today? And it would have been worth almost $100,000 more. Okay. But I would still be attached to a mortgage. Therefore, I would not feel financially secure to leave full-time work, right? So there's a give and take. To me, it's worth being 100% debt free than having an additional $100,000 in my E-Trade account, which I tell people is just a fake number because it goes up and down every single day. It's not until you eventually click sell that it actually translates to any meaningful value.
That is so true, and I completely agree to that part. Is like if you're getting a 15%, let's say, return already when it get allotted to you, and if you make that profit right away, you can definitely just pay off your debt. Some people can pay off their car. Some people can like plan for a new vacation. There are a lot of different things which you can do, or invest in. Let's say if someone's more like me, I'm a more of a conventional, traditional investor who invests more in ETFs. That's where I want to put my money. Is like keep on investing in that area. But definitely. So one question which come to my mind, as you mentioned about like you paid off your 15-year mortgage in 7 years. So that's where I want to take our conversation is from your perspective. Let's say if someone's making a good amount of money and they are still scratching their head in terms of like, should I save it? Because CDs are giving good interest, or like this, some of the bank accounts are giving good interest. Should I invest it? That S&P or Nasdaq is performing well so far, or crypto, let's say if someone wants to go completely high, or pay off the debt, just like what you did. So from your perspective, what are the best ways to get into it? And if someone wants to do everything, what are the breakdown should look like?
Yeah, this is a very common question I get from team members. And I want to preface my answer with this that it's not an all or nothing approach, right? It's not like you have to pick one of the three and ignore the other two.
Yeah.
The mentality I like to plant in the seed I like to plant in people's mind is this: consider like crescendo effect. When I was working full time in my corporate role, even before I joined Salesforce, my mentality has always been I'm going to save, invest, and pay off debt at the same time because I'm climbing a mountain. And when I reach the peak, I want everything to align together. Because think about it in this terms. If I had paid off all my debt, my mortgage, but yet have very little saves in a high yield savings account or have little invested in my retirement account, I would still be unable to retire early because I have nothing to live off of during retirement, right? Conversely, and I just mentioned this, if I saved aggressively and I invested aggressively, but I have still $200,000 mortgage sitting attached to my ankle, I still would not be able to retire early because the monthly obligation will linger in my mind, linger in my heart, and cause me to stay awake at night. Like I have to make money every single month because I got a mortgage payment. If I don't make that mortgage payment, my family will be kicked out, right? So both of those are bad. So that's why I call it the crescendo effect. Having both work together. I was saving at a high yield savings account to have a 2 year buffer. I have 2 years worth of cash reserves so that if I choose not to work, choose not to have any client work, and totally be disengaged from employment, I can do that. And also, I invested to make sure I got all the low hanging fruit, the company match, the tax free money, the tax free growth, right? And everything extra I put into my mortgage, right? So now it all came together in 2023. February 2023, I paid off my mortgage. I left Salesforce in October 2023, right? It all came together that year. Now, I understand that people have limited budgets. So the idea of saying like, hey, save $70,000 a year in retirement accounts, pay off your mortgage in 7 years, that can be overwhelming. And it is overwhelming because that's a lot of money we're talking about. But what people don't, but what people need to understand is this. It's about choices that you have to make. The last 10 years, when I started this journey when I was 27 on this financial journey, and I retired at 37, so 10 years, there were a lot of sacrifices behind the scenes that people couldn't see that I made, that my family made. I have a wife and 2 kids that we made to in order for us to do both of these things at the same time. So we still drive the same 20-year-old cars. You know, I have no, not 20, it's 15-year-old. I have a 2010 Camry and a 2011 Honda Odyssey with 245,000 miles on it. And my kids went on their first Disney World vacation this January. Even though my daughter is going to be 10 years old and I used to live in Florida, which we were 1 hour from Disney World, but she never got to see Mickey Mouse until this year. Why? It's because we prioritize saving and investing and paying off debt first before anything else.
That is so phenomenal. And again, I completely agree. It's like if you see a big amazing mountain, a big glacier, you don't see the bottom of what it takes to build that mountain or build that thing. So kudos to you and your family on achieving this amazing freedom. So would love to take your like advice on like and share it with the other people as well. Like let's say if someone's planning to buy a house, which is one of the biggest thing in their whole life when they make a purchase. What are the key things to take care when they are like, hey, let's buy a house? What are the key things to plan out from a financial perspective so that they don't feel like we are burned out?
Yes. So you're right. A house purchase is probably the biggest ticket item that any one of us will have in this lifetime. One of the things I stress to my clients when they are buying their very first home, because I know in today's market, it's not what it used to be 10 years ago. 100% get that. Is do not be house poor, okay? You can convince yourself that I need to get a house. I need to get, put, the 20% down and get the mortgage payment that's $5,000 a month for the next, 15, 30 years, whatever it is, right? But if you are house poor, meaning that now you can't afford anything else, your quality of life will drastically decrease. I mean, that's pretty common sense. But also, it has a drastic impact on the other areas of your financial well being, saving and investing. Right? If you had to look under your sofa for pennies to put down your down payment, you probably don't have an emergency fund or a sufficient emergency fund for those unexpected house repairs. The first time your washer and dryer goes out and you need to replace it, that's $1,000. And if your default is I'll open up a Lowe's credit card that has 0% interest for 12 months is your answer, there's a big problem there. Okay. So one of the things I encourage people is this: be patient and do it when it is right for you and your family and right for you financially. Ideally, your house payment should not be more than 25% of your household. Ideally, okay? I get it. Some people stretch. Understand, educate. People need to educate themselves and realize that there are other expenses other than just the mortgage payment, right? And take that into consideration. and also fit into that picture of home ownership, how are you going to save for retirement as well? Because there are clients of mine who say home ownership is not for them. They just want to be renters, either because they don't like the responsibilities of home ownership, the yard work, the upkeeping, fixing, and repairing, but they also like the flexibility. And that's something a lot of people don't give enough credit to when renting. There's a tremendous amount of flexibility in just, if you, let's say, and obviously I don't wish this on you, but if you were to be let go from your job and you want to relocate from a high cost of living to a low cost of living area, well, guess what? If you're renting, there's probably a lot of negotiation room with your landlord and them understanding, yeah, you just got let go from your job and you can't afford rent. It's probably in both of our best interests to come to some sort of amicable separation, right? But if you're a homeowner, yeah, the first call you make to the mortgage company, to the bank, and say, hey, you got laid off, they're going to say, so what? What does that have to do with us, right? So I
That's true.
encourage people to think beyond the moment. And I get it. It's very tempting to be a homeowner because, you know, it's a status, right? But I tell people, well, you don't want to have the status, but also be house poor and just scraping by.
That is so true. I mean, like we have seen people sort of taking these kind of decisions of like house buying or buying something very luxurious, of without any need, but they just saw someone or they just want to enjoy that particular luxury lifestyle, and they go above and beyond of their paychecks, and then it's just like you mentioned, they're house poor, they can do something, and if something, god knows, if something goes bad, they cannot make any more payments, and it's all in a different level. So definitely, I completely agree, you should definitely plan of what it looks like when you are buying or making these kind of big purchases, and you have to be prepared for, like, let's say if something goes bad, you have to at least be prepared for 6 to 8 months to make your lifestyle still going in the same way. Great. So your other, this is again, you're sharing some amazing tips and advices from a finance perspective, but you're also helping different individuals, let's say out of college, in career coaching side of the work as well. So love to ask a couple of questions in that area as well. So like, in the recent years, what are some common concerns that you have heard from the college grads or like sort of like early professionals about choosing their career path?
Right. So yes, you're correct. So before I became this tax advisor for Salesforce team members, one of my side hustles, side business that I've done for the last 10 years was coaching college students make their transition from the classroom to the corporate life. Because I came to America when I was 4 years old, and my parents were rice farmers. So with fifth grade education from China, so they didn't really know the U.S. education system. Basically, they couldn't help me navigate that journey. So I had to do it all on my own. I have a sister and a brother, so the three of us, we had to navigate college on our own. So one of the things I did was I wanted to give back. When I started advancing in my career, one of the things I did was coach other students make that transition from the classroom to the corporate life and help answer questions and just avoid pitfalls that I made myself, unbeknownst to me. So one of the concerns that I see a lot of students have is, do I really need to work at a big company right off the gate, right? And I always encourage people to this. My general rule is this: try to work for the biggest company that you can. Why? Is because you will cast the biggest network. You will be able to create the biggest network. It's the network that will take you the furthest in life. Because of this, the more people you know, the more ability you can help people, and the more ability opportunities that people can help you down the road. A lot of the jobs that I've received and the opportunities I've received in my career is because somebody either referred me to it or somebody had inside knowledge that there's an opening in that company and was able to pass that information down to me. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, I switched jobs almost 2 to 3 years, right? I didn't stay in a company long. Well, one, the reason was because my intention was not to climb the corporate ladder, but it was more of make earn as much money as possible so I can get out of corporate life. So in order to do that, you have to go after the 20% jump in pay every couple of months. I mean, every couple of years. So I would always encourage people, try your best to get with the largest company right after college, right? Because that will set the tone and set the pace on how far you go in early in your career. Second, I know a lot of college students are concerned about their starting pay, and I get it. That when you are fresh out of college, earning 50, 60,000, you know, it, for us who are making 200, 300,000 as sales stores, it's hard for us to go back in time and think like, how do you survive on 50,000 a year, right? But I always encourage people, this college students, to to not look at their first year salary as the end all be all, because it's not. If you do a great job in learning and applying yourself, that 50,000 in a year or two will become 70,000. In another couple years, that $7 will easily become 100,000. And I tell people this, not just for new people, but also mid-career. Our salary earning potential, especially at companies like Salesforce, goes like this, like a rocket ship. It's not like this, no. As soon as you get a promotion and you start getting RSUs grants, it just skyrockets, right? And so I tell people, look at the long picture, that this is just a journey and your first job is the first step. Now, obviously, it has implications down the road, but don't look at your salary and say like, oh, I can't work for this company unless I make like 70,000 my first year. One, I think that's unrealistic unless you are in a very in demand field, of course. But I tell people, like, put in the work, put in the struggle, put in the dedication, and level yourself up, because the opportunities will be there. So not to focus too much on total comp your first year.
That's true. I think first year should be more on the experience of like what it takes to work in a corporate world and like experience new things and network. Like it's the biggest thing because that's where your networking will start. You're meeting new individuals, different professionals, which will actually lead you towards your next 10 years. Like either you're shifting careers or shifting different jobs. Oh, that's a great advice. So I think we're about to close our episode, but before we close, I would like to ask you one last question. Is like if you go back and give your younger self one piece of advice on finance and one piece of advice on career, what it would be?
So if I was to go back in time and give myself an advice, it's this. It's to have a bigger budget for leisurely activities. Um, so I sometimes give people the impression that you need to save, 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 pay off debt, and that's the only two things. And honestly, there was a period in my life that was all that I thought about. Like I'm gonna save every single penny and pay off every single debt as quickly as possible. But now that I'm 38 and I'm still very young, of course, but I just celebrated 14 years of marriage and my oldest is going to be 10 years old. And there are times looking back, I should have budgeted, an additional $1,000 for a vacation, that we should have gone on, a better vacation. And I spent an extra 1,000 or 2,000, right? The reason being is because you will never get that time back. I'm all for saving money and paying off debt, but I think sometimes we forget that today is the only day that's guaranteed. And these experiences have a timestamp on it. Meaning the experience you have with your 5 year old is going to be different when she's 10, when she's 16, especially when she's 21. So take advantage of those moments. And I encourage my clients, like, yes, save and pay off debt, but also give yourself the freedom to spend a few extra dollars on things that are absolutely meaningful to you, and not be afraid to spend an extra 1,000 on vacation if your budget supports that. Looking back now, looking at it's funny when I look at my retirement account, and I just think about like, wow, like, we are blessed that we can say like we probably have more money than we'll ever spend in a lifetime. And even if I had spent an extra $1,000 the last 10 years, for the last 10, we would still be at the exact same place we are today. So I would say that just give yourself that freedom to just spend more money on things that are meaningful to you and to your family.
That's a great piece of advice because as we grow up, we feel like we should definitely live a little as well as while we are saving for our future, but we should definitely live in the present, which is now. That's an absolutely amazing advice. So, Xiao, thank you so much for sharing your tips, your advice, your insights on what it takes to manage the personal finance and how to maximize your returns on from your corporate benefits, may be 401ks or ESPPs or stock options, and how can you save more taxes. So, those were some amazing advices. Once again, thank you so much for joining us and on the show. And we look forward to more such conversation down the road to like deep dive more into more of the personal finance questions.
Absolutely, G. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.